let's start with the two biggest topics. Numero uno, the Brits vote out of the European Union yesterday in a stunning turn of events. All polls predicting that the British would stay in the European Union. It has been defeated, and it was soundly crushed yesterday as Brits decided they have had enough with the European Union. They want their sovereignty back. They want their country back. They want to put Britons first. They want to control their own destiny. They don't want faceless bureaucrats in Brussels deciding the fate of the British nation. And so they vote out of the European Union. There is hope, my friends, for the world based on this vote. Right after that, and we're going to get all into this detail, Prime Minister David Cameron announced that he'll be resigning as Prime Minister of Britain. He was the biggest cheerleader to remain in the European Union. He got rebuked totally yesterday, and he says that before the Conservative Party convention convenes in October, that there will be a new prime minister for Britain. So David Cameron doing the right thing. He says, I'm not the guy to lead us out of the European Union. I'm going to do the right thing for Britain, and I'm going to resign, and there'll be a new prime minister that will come from within the Conservative Party. Also yesterday, the Supreme Court rebuking President Obama's amnesty for illegal aliens in a 4-4 tie vote. Means they didn't make a decision. It goes back to the lower court, which gets all the way down to Judge Hainan in Texas, who is the first one to have made the injunction against Obama's amnesty. Judge Hainan going to go down as maybe a historic figure in our time for stopping this. Now, had Justice Scalia not passed a few months ago, this certainly would have been a 5-4 vote, which would have made things a little bit easier, but still a great victory for those that believe in the sanctity of the Constitution. Obama trampling all over it. One of the most fascinating things, though, here is that 4 of the 8 judges vote in favor of tearing up the Constitution as it relates to executive action. I mean, I thought this vote should have been 8-0. I mean, I get the ideological divide, the philosophical divide on the court, but how 4 liberal judges can basically say Obama can do what he wants, or any president can do what he wants, is stunning to me. And I tell you what, it really raises the stakes in this election coming up, because if Hillary Clinton wins, she's going to appoint a majority of liberal judges. We could have 3 or 4 in the next 8 years coming out. If Clinton wins, it's going to change the trajectory of the republic as we know it for generations ahead. So that's why the stakes in this election are so high. But a big victory nonetheless yesterday for those that believe in the sanctity of the republic and the Constitution put together by our founding fathers, who understood the limits needed by the executive branch. Again, how 4 Supreme Court judges cannot see this is a scary thought in America. Now, let's get to the Brexit vote. And as I said, this is really a stunning development, because all the pundits said that it was not going to turn out this way. Now, let's just start at the top. Voters in Great Britain in a plebiscite voted to remove itself from the European Union. Now, some say this move could set off a raft of financial and economic uncertainty across the globe. This is about a sovereign nation. This is about the British public saying we have had enough with globalization. Basically, if you're in Britain right now, you have turned over your government to bureaucrats in Brussels. They determine your immigration policy. They determine your financial policy. Now, the best thing that Britain did when entering the European Union, the best thing they did, and I've got quite the narrative here, so hang with me. The best thing they did is they didn't go to the euro, and they kept the pound, which means they kept their central banking system. Now, this campaign was intense, and I can give you assurances that Washington was all in on Britain staying in the European Union. And let me tell you the main reason behind it. I'm going to tell you the truth. The main has nothing to do with financial markets or there might be chaos on Wall Street. It's got nothing to do with that. Washington wanted the United Kingdom to stay in the European Union for one reason. Let me tell you what it is. Because Wall Street and the U.S. banking system and the banksters that run the country don't want to compete with the British banking system, which is their now only European competition for world financial dominance. You're not going to hear this anyplace else. When you trace the origins of the European Union back to its embryonic genesis, back to its roots, it was the Central Intelligence Agency that first concocted the idea. And the reason Washington wanted the Brits in is so eventually they could dissolve the pound, go to the euro, so you have no central bank of England, therefore taking out the only Western competition to monetary financial dominance of New York Wall Streeters. This had nothing to do with what was right for Brits and everything to do with the banksters on Wall Street looking for total financial dominance, the one percenters, if you will. That's really what's going on here. Now, despite the constant propaganda against the exit, the Brits said they had enough. When Parliament member Joe Cox was horrifically assassinated on the street, the British media, in conjunction with the conservative government and the liberals, okay, everybody was in favor of this, except a handful of outsiders when this exit thing started. They took that assassination and turned it to something it isn't in order to stoke the fear of what would happen if they left the Union. However, voters decided. This is the power of a plebiscite, and you have to hand it to David Cameron, even though he resigned, and I'm not a fan of his. Even though he resigned, he's the one that did authorize the plebiscite, the referendum, if you will. And now, in true democracy fashion, stunningly, Brits say they had enough. Now, the newspaper in Britain, The Guardian, one of the leading papers, which led the whole propaganda line, basically said that the attack on Joe Cox was led by those that were racist. They turned this whole thing into something about race. It had nothing to do with race. Now, what happened yesterday is regular working people in the United Kingdom, like America, were just aghast at the transformation of their country. That's what happened. This had nothing to do with financial markets and things like that. They were aghast with how their country has changed. Now, it's had nothing to do with race. The British have a long history of fighting off invaders, right? Everybody knows that studies any kind of history. Many in Britain felt they were experiencing an invasion, although not an armed invasion. Because if it was an armed invasion, obviously everybody would be behind stopping the invaders. No, this was an invasion of immigrants flooding Britain from all over the globe, trying to transform their country like they're trying to transform ours. People that would come in to Britain, allowed in by policies of the European Union government in Brussels that London had nothing to do with and had no say. I mean, imagine giving up the governance of your country to somebody else. It's insane. That's why they voted it down. Now, Brits were looking at a complete change in their country. And the problem is, with the influx of these immigrants all over the globe, the problem is that the globalists want to break down sovereignty and borders everywhere. And part of it breaking down is what we call non-assimilation. Now, you're not going to hear this anyplace else. Non-assimilation. Our forefathers, our grandfathers, like mine, and many of you listening today, and our fathers, who came to this country, and our mothers and grandmothers, they came here to assimilate and become Americans. to ingratiate themselves in the American Western Judeo-Christian culture. So you got a stronger America. My grandparents they came from Germany. You couldn't speak German anywhere in the household. When I grew up, nobody could speak it. When they would get together, if they wanted to speak German, they excluded the kids. They wanted them to be Americanized. Not so much now. Now you have non-assimilation. And that's what's going on in Britain. Nobody was assimilating just like they are in the United States. So it's a breakdown of your culture, which is an overall objective to break down your sovereignty so you have an open borders globalist world, which has one objective for the bankster elitist in Wall Street. One objective: cheap labor. Now, I know I say this every day because I'm telling you the truth. You got to turn on CNN and Fox and all this stuff, and all you're going to hear is the same nonsense about financial markets and transitioning out and what their strategy is for Brexit. It's got nothing to do with this. This is all propaganda by the media. This whole effort in keeping the Brits in the European Union, the entire effort was driven by Washington and Wall Street to break down the British central bank. Because if the U.S. controls all the world currency, along with the feckless bureaucrats in Brussels, they have no competition. Then they can simply do whatever they please. And the ultimate goal is slave labor, cheap labor. The Brits stood up and said, you know what, we've had enough. And we're out. And damn, whatever you say the consequences are, we will figure it out because we want our country back. This is our country. It's not Europeans' country. It's not Angela Merkel's country. It's not Brussels' country. It's Britain. We want our country back. We fought off invaders for centuries, including the Nazis, the Japanese, etc., and the French. And now we want our country back. We want to take control of our own destiny. There's a British pride. This, my friends, is a significant event in world history, not just Britain, in world history.